Kia ora everyone, and welcome to the second presentation in the series of the Beca Digital Solutions webinars. It gives me great pleasure to be your host today, and I'm joined by some fantastic speakers. First up, we have Farzam Farzadi from Beca and Steve Webster from Watercare. They'll be sharing Watercare's enterprise model digital implementation journey. Following that, I'll be joined by Christian McCartney from Hawkins and Cal Fitzpatrick from Auckland Airport, where we'll be sharing a story on Auckland Airport's digital delivery journey as part of their terminal upgrade program. Without further ado, I'll hand over to Farzam and Steve to kick off the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. I'm Steve Webster. I'm the Chief Infrastructure Officer from Watercare. My team is responsible for the strategy, feasibility, design, and construction of our infrastructure program, and we'll talk about our program as we go through this webinar. Just want to, I guess, focus on what we are going to discuss today, both Farzam and I. It really is, it's our digital implementation journey. So it's where we're up to. So it's not finished, it's not complete. We are in the what I would suggest probably 50% through it. We have a fair way to go, so a fair bit to do. But some of the things we want to touch on is it's all about an environment. The environment you set. It's not about tools. You won't hear us talking about tools at all, and there'll be some commentary certainly in our summary around tools and how tools are being presented to us. It is about having the right people and the right partners. As a client who have a very large infrastructure program, we can't do this by ourselves. And if we want to have world-class digital implementation, it's not just the client's function. We need people to help us and partners to help us. It's also all about benefits. It's not about just implementing something. It's about benefits and value that's associated with it. So if you look at our enterprise, we have a large infrastructure program. It's delivered through what we call our enterprise model. The majority of our infrastructure programs delivered through an enterprise model. Now that's a collaborative environment. It's a collaborative environment which has partners involved, and they've joined us on term contracts, so 10-year contracts to deliver the majority of our infrastructure program. But importantly, what sits over top of the program is a vision, and that vision is to reduce our built carbon, so our carbon in construction, by 40%. We want to reduce our infrastructure delivery cost, so that's from end to end, from one end of the chain, from planning right through to closure and handover to our operations team. We want to reduce that by 20%. And importantly, we want to reduce our health and safety outcomes and wellbeing outcomes for everyone involved in our infrastructure program by 20% year on year. So that's not just Watercare staff. That's our consultants, our contractors, our subcontractors, anyone who touches our infrastructure program. We're determined to improve their safety and wellbeing on the way through. So that's, I guess, part of it. That's our enterprise model itself. What's it there to deliver? It's there to deliver a large portion of our 10-year, $13 billion program. So it's a large infrastructure program in the water sector. It's globally significant, and our calculations, or our look at our resourcing, at a peak, we'll need about 2,500 people working on this at any one time. So as we hit our peak in the next couple of years, so we'll have designers, constructors, planners, subcontractors, suppliers working on our infrastructure program to deliver for Auckland, our customers in Auckland, with about 2,500 people. Importantly, it's a program that's not just a single project, it's multiple projects. So over the next 3 years, we'll be touching 500 projects. So that's from feasibility through to construction. So if you look at it, what we call a conveyor, it starts at our AMP, it drops into feasibility, and then we do business planning. We then start design, and then we construct, and then we hand over to our operational team. The projects range from $1 billion, circa $1 billion, to $100,000. So there's a wide range of projects, and our digital implementation is different across that range. You don't have a digital toolkit for $1 billion project. It's the same as a $100,000 project. So it is different across all those projects. But one of the things we did realize when we looked at this and spoke to our partners and worked through our digital journey is that we needed focus, real focus on this. We started this probably 4 years ago. The first couple of three years, to be fair, we didn't do that well. We thought we knew what we were doing, but we didn't really have the secret sauce, and we'll talk to you about what that secret sauce is very soon. We were probably looking at it more on a project basis than a program base. And as soon as we did that, we felt we came unstuck and we became unfocused and really didn't get it, didn't achieve the value that we knew we could achieve through our program. So Farzam, I don't know whether you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Thanks, Steve. Literally the biggest challenge that we identified since we established value realization implementation journey is that consistency is the key. And as you highlighted, the range of projects that we have, the size of projects that we have makes this program very complex. But at the same time, we have the environment that we can create outcomes that we are going to share with you soon.
Thanks, Farzam. So we'll just move on to our digital journey itself. So we talked about the program, the size of it, the complexity of it. We've got some partners involved. There's 7 organisations effectively in the majority of our program. So that includes Watercare. So what we realised, and we did realise early, but we're really starting to get some traction on, is that the digital initiatives, whatever they are, and they're not just 3D drawings, they are massive and encompass a massive end-to-end, I guess, processes and systems. They can become a significant part of our delivery of our outcomes. Now, we don't need to implement them, because 20 years ago people didn't have them, but if we really want to make this program hum and drive real performance and deliver value, we have to embrace this digital program and the digital work we're doing. And one of the key things we found was we create a whole lot of data. We create a whole lot of information, and it's created multiple streams. So it's in drawings and documents and a whole lot of areas in our program. And we weren't really managing that very well as we should have. And a large asset owner, we should be good at this, but we probably weren't as good as we should have been. And so we create a lot, but then what we need to do is we need to manage it. But importantly, we need to recycle it. So there's a whole lot of information that we use over and over and over again. What we do in our industry is we often reinvent it each time. And that's really the one part of the secret sauce to this digital transformation for us and this journey for us is understanding that we can constantly be recycling this information, and therefore we need less input at the front end, and we can just use that information as we go through our program and projects. Farzam, you got anything you'd like to add to that?
Very quick comments from my end. As you highlighted, the challenge was maintaining consistency and implementing the standards, the requirements that are already established ages ago for Watercare. And our approach was that we implemented a system through 5 different steps. Step 1 for us was that creating a baseline, and that baseline was existing standards, strategies that developed a couple of years ago, and we wanted to make sure that these standards being implemented across all of our projects consistently. The second piece was the implementation, how the questions that we needed to answer, how we can mobilize a team that implemented across 7 different organizations, across approximately, as you highlighted, 2,500 people. And the third question that we tried to answer as part of value realization piece that we are doing is monitoring and tracking return on investment. If we implement a good digital strategy is one thing, tracking the value and demonstrating the value is one of the challenges that we have in industry currently. Step 4 for us was managing change. We learned that digital transformations for us is not just technological change, it's a cultural change, and how we can manage it, as I highlighted, across a significant number of stakeholders and the supply chain. And step 5 for us, that we know that we need to improve. We know that if we establish a system of requirements right now, there is a requirement that in a year or two we need to review it again.
Thanks, Farzam. So Farzam talked about value, and this was something that we as an organisation were very focused on. And I want to be pretty blunt, I guess. We were constantly having people come to us and try and sell us a product. Sell us a new system and a new product, and you need to digitize this, and you need to do this, and you should be doing that. And we're going, oh, yeah, right. Well, I'm not sure we need to, but do we want to? Our response to them was, well, can you show us the value? Show us the benefits, what's actually going to, we've got a $13 billion program. Tell us what the value is. Simple way of describing that is show us the money. It was very difficult to get an answer from the marketplace on this. In fact, to the point that occasionally I just had blank stares. Didn't quite understand what I was asking for. Well, and so the response from us was, well, if you can show us the value, we'll invest in it. But if you can't show us the value, why would I invest in anything, and why would I even put it in place? And that was probably the turning point for us when we realized that we needed to articulate that value ourselves. And so we worked with our partners, and we articulated what we believe the value was in a digital implementation work stream that if we put in place and really drove this hard, what value did we think we could generate for Aucklanders, the people of Auckland? Because that's what we're here to do. We're here to deliver a program, and we're here to deliver it as efficiently as we can. Just looking at a practical implementation, so this is not anything flash, and Farzam will talk about this. This is about consistency and mandating and making sure that we do this in every one of our projects. Our estimate of an analysis of our program and looking at the initiatives, the benefits to Auckland is between 2 and 4%. So to put that in dollars, on that size program, it's $260 million to $500 million worth of value we believe we can generate. Now that's part of our 20% saving that we'll generate. Now we're looking to generate in our infrastructure program. We'll generate savings across multiple areas, but from a digital implementation, doing this properly, consistently, we believe we can get somewhere between 2 and 4%, and we've done that analysis, and we're well on the way to doing that. So this is worth doing. It's absolutely worth doing. Once we have that value and we're showing ourselves the money, it really has galvanized us to do something different. So some of the other benefits we're looking to, go to the next slide, please. So where is the savings coming from? We're lucky, I guess. Because we have our 7 partners, and our 7 partners focus from one end of the journey to the other, which is from feasibility, procurement, design, and construct. So they're involved in all of that. What we've found is there's value in each one of those phases. Now, there's no favourite. A lot of the products that were sold, people used to come and try and sell products to us, or were in the design area, but that's not actually. It's not the only place value is generated. It's absolutely generated in construction, in procurement, and feasibility. I've said this earlier. We really are not implementing anything new with respect to technology. We're just really delivering an ecosystem that works for us, and are driving this. This consistency of implementation, and that really is the secret sauce for a program like ours. It's not new products. It's not something different. It's actually taking everything we have got, mandating it. I'll be really clear about this. Mandating it. It's not a request. It's not something you can choose to do. If you're delivering this type of project, this is this is the digital journey you'll be on. This is what you'll deliver. And then we need to monitor the consistent implementation across our program to make sure we're all doing what we're supposed to do. Once again, it's not about digital tools and platforms, but implementation is the key. I mean, some of the things we've found, just examples of things like someone rocked up the other day with a, and this is a bit of detail, right? A GBR report, which is 390 pages. How does that even work? right? We don't need those. We don't need that sort of detail, right? So what we're doing with our digital implementation is we're asking the constructor, we're asking the designer. So people who are involved in feasibility are asking the people they're serving fundamentally what they need and what they actually need. Designers need the constructors need half the drawings that they're traditionally given in a traditional model. They don't use the majority of them. And so why do we produce them? We produce them because our industry is used to doing it. That's the beauty of the enterprise model, is we have partners that are looking from end to end and are collaborating end to end. Another example of too much information, we produce 150-page reports for construction consents. It's a consent for a pipeline down a road. We've done 58 of them in the last 4 years. Now, why do we produce such enormous amounts of data and information? We actually only need, the regulator needs probably 6 or 8 pieces of information. That's all they need. But we have created this industry around creating data. We have to challenge it. We've really got to go after it. And that's what we're doing with our enterprise model. So other benefits, we need to understand where our costs were, and that's what we did with identifying our savings. Drive into and understand where your costs are, and then go and tackle them. Don't just implement something and think it will tackle the problem and solve it for you and give you a benefit. Go and find the problem you're solving and go after it. And that's what we're utilising our digital platforms for. We need to, and we're really challenging industry norms and business models. For the enterprise model, Watercare completely changed our model. We had a traditional project model, which was, you did your feasibility, then you'd go and get a designer through the marketplace and procure them. You'd procure a constructor. Very, very slow, laborious process. What we have now is we completely changed our model. We allocate 10 years worth of work to our constructors and our designers. They don't bid the work. Constructors are involved in a continuous ECI from feasibility through design through construction. So we have completely changed our model. What we're needing the industry to do is to change their models as well to get the best out of our digital journey. Reducing size of documents, I've talked about, the numbers of drawings, just the simple stuff. You don't need any new technology to do this. This is just making a decision to do it, because your end partner, the constructor or designer, has said, well, I don't actually need all of that. It's not what I need, it's what I don't need. So let's go after what they don't need. And one of the things we're doing is monitoring rework, RFIs and variations within our construction. And one example is a $20 million project. Digitization of information and data coming through to our contractors has saved us about $400,000 just in processing cost on that site. Now, that's not the other on costs of RFIs and variations. So the pool of saving and benefit here is enormous. And I really implore everyone to go after it, because it's sitting there, but you need a model to enable you to do it. Doing things in a traditional manner, truly believe, will not really enable us in our marketplace. We've got to change the way we operate. Farzam.
Thanks, Steve. As you truly shared, enterprise model is an environment that created that culture of creating data that we can utilize during life cycle of our assets. And during this slide, I'm going to take you through now how we use informations at the Watercare. And informations are not just about 3D models or smart PNIDs. The informations that we are having, we are categorizing them and use them during 4 different stages, for design and planning phase, for construction and delivery management, for asset management, and for our overall program management. The key for us is that how we can empower our stakeholders, which is about 2,500 people, to be able to create reliable data consistency, how we can use informations that being developed during design phase for interdisciplinary collaboration, how we can use them for safety in design, how we can have practical early contractual involvement to check the practicality of our design, because that is literally the value come from, because that is going to significant number of our RFIs and reworks during execution phase, how we can utilize construction rehearsals and planning right through design phase, how we can capture our asset informations that we need for management of our assets during design phase and construction phase rather than post commissioning of a facility, which become very complex exercise for us, how we can receive reliable site verified data that if after 6 months of a creation of a new pump station, if we wanted to add a new pump on site, we use the existing data that already Watercare paid for it. We use it for risk management. We reuse it for construction management and planning, etc. And that's literally the 4 main area that we are focused on. The next exercise for us was, after we identified our requirements, we collaborated our requirements with all our partners. The piece that Enterprise Model enabled us was that for the first time, we established a digital implementations group within New Zealand infrastructure industry. And this implementation group, we have members from 7 different organizations, from project management team, from design partners, from construction partners, from operations teams. They are involved, from sustainability team. They are involved to help us to create a balanced information management that we planned with the leadership team at Watercare at the start of this journey. The concept of balanced information management for us is, if we review the golden triangle for project and program manager, which is time, cost, and quality, we don't want to purchase a new tool. We didn't need to create a new standard. And that's actually one of the mistakes that I believe we have in New Zealand industry and infrastructure. We reinvent the wheel too much rather than focusing on implementation for a specific period of time, make it a business as usual, and then improve it right through the planning. Often we change our strategies again and again, and that's a cost associated exercise. Our target was that highlighted area in green is balance area, that how we can capitalize, which the input to this system was that we wanted to capitalize on current standards, platforms, tools, technological systems and processes that are available at Watercare, how we're looking after our assets during operations and maintenance, how we use informations for sustainability studies, and utilize these informations and make sure that we do that investment and checking to monitor implementations consistently. As you heard a lot, this word is that I think that key for us, that consistent implementation, and that's is a challenge, because we are facing we are having a significant stakeholders on board, and that is the way that we are operating currently, and it's enabled us to be able to demonstrate return of investment, because that was the key for us to enable to unlock this initiative. It was the key initiative that we have tasked as part of value realizations team at Watercare, and collectively we are partners. We came with the conclusions based on the data that we had on existing project, that value will come from consistent implementations of our current requirements. Back to you, Steve.
Thanks, Farzam. So just in summary, there are some lessons we've learned. We don't need flashy presentations and digital tools. We've actually got virtually everything we need. In the future, we'll probably need to implement some more tools, but what we need to do is get the best out of what we got. We need to look at value, and we need to look at return on investment. Otherwise, we're not going to bother doing anything. Once again, it's not about digital tools, it's about implementing and systemizing it. So systemize what we've already got, be consistent, mandate it, but across the program end to end. Just doing it in construction doesn't work for us. It needs to start really early. We have a holistic digital program. There's a transformation across that whole environment, not one piece of the environment. And that enables us to really generate the value. And have an environment that creates the willingness and want of the people inside that environment to deliver the outcomes you want, and therefore we will invest, and we will then see the value associated with that. Farzam, I don't know whether you have anything to add.
Just one comment for me. The questions that some of you may ask in this call, and I ask a lot from myself, why we don't have enterprise model or something, an environment like this implemented across all of our major infrastructure projects and water projects in New Zealand. To answer it, I don't know what is the answer to that, but this environment enabled people like me, people that are passionate about what they do, to be the best version of themselves. Enterprise model enabled to remove traditional boundaries that we have between planners, designers, contractors, and operators, and bring all of them together to work collaboratively. So, Steve, thanks to you and Watercare leadership team for creating such an environment. And I hope that one day in the near future, we see this method implemented across most of our projects, at least in water sector.
Back to you, Glenn.
Thank you, Farzam and Steve. That was absolutely fantastic. A reminder to everyone, please, to use the Q&A function and ask questions throughout, so we can go back to them at the end. I'd now like to hand over to Cal Fitzpatrick, who's going to kick us off on some background of Auckland Airport's digital journey. That'll then pass from Cal through to me, then from me through to Christian, and back to Cal to give everyone an end-to-end view of what this looks like. So without further ado, over to Cal.
Thank you, Glenn. First of all, I just want to thank Steve and Farzam for your great presentation. I think the key takeaway there is about collaboration, and at the end of the day, a lot of the digital side, we can get hung up on the tools and the software, but at the end of the day, it is about bringing people together, collaboration, and sharing information to help get things built in a more intelligent way. So it's a real honour here to be here today to present the journey at Auckland Airport. A lot of you would have travelled through Auckland Airport at some point in your working days. It's a key project within New Zealand and one of the largest infrastructure projects that's ongoing in New Zealand at the moment. So just a brief outline of what's actually going on out there. You would have seen a lot of cranes and construction and traffic disruption, but essentially what's been going on is that we've recently, at the end of last year, opened a new hotel, the Pullman Hotel, adjacent to the Novotel. We're near the end of the Transport Hub project, which is in the position of what was previously Car Park A, and that's going to change the whole pick-up and drop-off experience at the airport over the coming years. The first phase of that, the ground floor, should open in the coming months, and that will make a huge impact on our passenger journey as they come to and from the airport. In the terminal space, there's always day-to-day projects going on, minor improvements here and there that you'll see around the place, but one of the key projects that's going on for the next 5 years is the domestic processor project. And what this does is integrates our domestic jets, so that's the planes travelling between Auckland and the other major centres within New Zealand. So the planes that have a jet engine, not the propeller planes, will be integrated into our international terminal and form an integrated terminal. So people arriving from other major domestic centres in New Zealand will be able to transition straight through the terminal into the international, and vice versa, that you'll be able to arrive internationally and then connect to other areas, the other major centres within New Zealand. So this is a multi-billion-dollar project over a number of years, and it's all in a live environment. So we've got the terminal, which is about 145,000 square metres, that's been developed over the last 50 years, and it's basically under construction every day of the week. So having to build another $2 to $3 billion project on top of that while operating a terminal and keeping everything going is quite a challenge, and that's sort of the crux of why we've evolved into doing things in a digital way and trying to produce better information and share it across all of our designers and contractors, just to make life a little bit easier. So our journey is really I've presented this a number of times, but it's an evolution of information management and how things have been done, and just the way that technology has evolved. So, back in the day, computers didn't exist. So when the terminal was first built, it was a lot of really basic hand drawings, and they look like chicken scratchings now. And a lot of those documents were stored in a in a building that then had asbestos in it. We had to take those, salvage what we could, and at that point in time, scanners had been invented. So then the documents that could be salvaged and could be made sense of were then scanned and digitized, but they were still largely just digital copies of paper files. So once an as-built had been handed over to us at the airport, that document isn't updated again if changes are made to that area of the building. So you end up with it's like a jigsaw puzzle where all the pieces have been developed by different people, and that once they've been delivered, they're changed after the fact. So trying to piece that all together through paper-based and file-based technology is not ideal. So what happened with the scan documents were then extracted and turned into CAD documentation once CAD technology came, sort of in the 90s and early 2000s, and then a lot of files were then consolidated. So you've got a unified CAD plan of the terminal, but a lot of the individual drawings are still based in files. And then the next step of that was GIS. So that's a database world where we've actually taken the CAD documents, merged them into a GIS database, and then on top of that, been able to add a whole lot of data to those points, lines, and polygons. So it's enabled it was a big shift in the airport's information management strategy, because it enabled people to find information based on location on a map, same as in Google Maps, versus having to actually know where something's stored and finding it through a file name or asking someone where something's been stored, or finding it on a shelf. So it was really it made sense to go down that route, that we have an entire campus. It's much easier to find information by going to this place you want on the screen, clicking what's here, and finding information about that point. That as our GIS has been in the airport for sort of 14 or 15 years now, and is quite heavily integrated, and we use it to build apps for field capture and whatnot. And then the next evolution has been the development of BIM and building information management technology, so that we can actually build a better picture of our building. GIS is great for horizontal infrastructure and things out in the field, but when it gets to the level of detail in a building, it can get a little bit overwhelming for GIS. So we've gone down the route of BIM, and also as a client, understanding that our architects, engineers, contractors, civil construction companies are starting to use this technology to actually design and construct their projects. So how do we as a client facilitate that and actually make sure that everyone can share data appropriately? So where we are with BIM at the airport is we're sort of between a file-based world and a database world, where we've still got a number of files, but we're gradually merging these into a consolidated database so that we can actually align it better with our GIS system. And then over time, we will then be starting to link it into other systems within the airport, such as asset management and asset maintenance systems and finance registers. So GIS is a little bit more advanced in BIM at the airport, and they're more in that things in a database and starting to be linked, or they are linked to other systems. So we're just now trying to bring those two together. So the way we do this at the airport is we have a spatial information team. So that's where I sit as a BIM manager, and then we also have a GIS team as part of that. And the purpose of our team is we sit within the infrastructure delivery department, but we actually work across all business units, and our purpose is to enable the business to capitalize on the digitalization of infrastructure assets throughout their life cycle. So we're really concerned about capturing what's been in the past, what we currently have, and then also what's coming in the future, so that people can actually make better decisions by having the best information that they have around a particular asset, and we can also start to see the future. So in doing that, our vision is to empower the wider business with an accurate view of the past, present, and future of the airport spatial environment. So we want to be able to create a digital world where people can just go to the location that they're concerned about and then find information about the past, present, and what's coming in the future to help with their decision making. So to build this picture up in a BIM world, we've had a process over the last probably 7 or 8 years where we've been consolidating our 2D documentation, various design and construction BIM models that we've received from past projects, doing point cloud surveys and scans, and just traditional survey, as well as on-site observation using various apps, and pulling that information together to build a consolidated or federated model of our terminals and other assets, and making sure that they're all geolocated and can be dropped together regardless of what platform or software they were built on. We can pull all that information together and see the entire picture, and then we can add time on that as well and see what's coming in the future. And in terms of actually moving from that file-based world, we've got a whole lot of different BIM files. We're now working to look at how we can tie that geometry and the spatial information to databases, whether it's in our GIS world, our maintenance register, or our building information database. And that will enable people that don't have BIM expertise to actually just, they can input data and keep things updated, attach documents to a spatial or digital record of an asset, and that will then be made available across the business. And once all that's sorted, the next step is to then connect that to the rest of the business. And so a big project at the moment is developing a data dictionary and understanding what different parts of the business call particular assets, and really understanding what assets we care about, what information we need about those assets, and making sure that we get the right balance between what do we actually need to know about an asset, who needs to know about it, and who's the person to actually take ownership of that. And that's really around balancing resources and taking a practical approach of not actually just capturing things for the sake of it. So what that looks like in practice is we now have a pretty comprehensive model of our terminal. So in the past, the floor plans have been managed in a GIS-based world, but we've now got to the point where actually our BIM model is a full representation so we can replicate the floor plans from our model across the whole terminal. And then that will mean that going forward, we can just maintain this model, we can add new projects in, and then that gives us an up-to-date record of our facility. And this is used by various tenants. It's used by a maintenance crew to understand where things are and what they're looking at, how things are connected to each other. And it's also used by designers and contractors to be able to plan better future interventions. So this here has been an ongoing piece of work, and we'll continue to just build on this as a way to manage information at the airport. And then the next step on top of that is how do we communicate that to our supply chain, what we're actually trying to achieve. So we have our asset information delivery manual, it outlines, how we want information to be received, what information we need, and just making sure that each project's set up accordingly to deliver the information back to ourselves and also between the parties involved on the project. And then making sure that at the end of a project, we actually verify the information and get it back into our system so that we can continue building on that, what we call the record model of our existing inventory. And to do that, we have a pretty comprehensive list of all the assets that are needed, who's responsible for it, how detailed we need that to be modeled, and then what information is needed about each asset at what stage. So just trying to be as clear as we can upfront with all the parties involved so that they can then price accordingly and factor into their own processes how they're going to go about gathering that information and providing it back to us. And this also just improves consistency in how we can share information between parties. Still work in progress. We're always evolving this and working closely with industry and the likes of Glenn and Christian to refine things. And this it'll be a living document. And then in pushing that out to our supply chain, what then happens is we've then got our existing building, and we can now drop in all of our future projects seamlessly into our model and see what's coming in the future. And so when we've got we don't have the enterprise model where it's one party doing it all. We've got different parties doing different projects, and there's a lot of different pieces and then sub parts to the project. So trying to piece that all together and share with each party what's going on has been a big challenge. So this is one way of going about it. It hasn't been 100% perfect yet, but we are working towards how do we actually optimize the process and make sure that everyone's got the right information at hand. So now it's Christian's turn to show us how is it Christian or Glenn? Glenn's going to show from a design perspective how Beca has been involved at the airport.
Thank you, Carl. So Christian, he shared his slides with me, and I was quite enviable of Hawkins' history at Auckland Airport. So I did some digging within Beca And turns out we've done a lot of projects at the airport over probably the last 20 years, and they range from services providing project management, program management, engineering, digital consulting, GIS support, a wide range of services. So pretty impressive and pretty exciting from my point of view to be involved in the next decade, partnering with the airport. This actually led me to then, I guess, reflect on my own personal history at the airport. And I've been working with the airport for almost 10 years, starting back in late 2014, where I was involved in actually developing the airport's original BIM strategy for the terminal integration program. Since then, been involved in a few smaller projects, supporting Cal with the asset information delivery manual development. And since 2021, I've been the design BIM lead for the terminal integration enabling project, which is a significant piece of work to enable the new domestic processor to be joined on to the existing airport. Just to give you a sense of scale, this project from an information management point of view is absolutely enormous. So there's 48 different existing models. So that's the information that Cal mentioned previously in terms of the work that him and his wider team have been doing to capture existing information. On top of that, within this package of work, we have 19 individual design models. There's around 120 models for different project interfaces at any different point within the airport. So that can be interfacing work packages within terminal enabling. That can be interfacing work packages with domestic processor. That can be interfacing work packages with other programs as well. Within terminal enabling, we've got 260 people accessing our common data environment. So from an information management point of view, again, that's a significant piece of work to maintain that. And they come from 12 different companies, and there's 8 different disciplines. I firmly believe that this is a once in a generation program of work. So, again, very privileged to be part of the project. And as far as I mentioned earlier, it's really great to have clients like Cal, like Steve, that are actually setting these standards to enable us to deliver in a digital way. So just touching on the design side of things, and this certainly won't be new to a lot of people in the audience, but just a few things that we've done. So using model-based coordination, the big piece here is really around reducing construction risks. So how do we identify and resolve issues? They can be design-related issues, they can be access-related issues, and we use a pretty standard program called Webster on this project to manage those issues. We've actually resolved over 12,000 through the last few years of work. So, Steve was talking about reducing RFIs through construction. One way of doing that is to reduce these type of issues, which equals dollar savings for everybody downstream. On top of that, we've gone, I guess, a step beyond in terms of what is put into the model. So a number of things that are typically done by the specialist subcontractors, things like seismic restraints for services, gravity supports for services, and support frames for services have been included in the model, just to allow us, again, to get that extra layer of coordination in what is a very, very complex project. It'll be complex as a greenfield. This is quite a big, significant piece of refurbishment and expansion. So important that we get that information in there and allow the team to coordinate appropriately. Our quantity surveyors, so they've been pulling the model-based information into a platform called CostX and using that to support the quantity estimation process. Again, we go back to creating an environment, setting a standard. By setting that standard and creating the environment for others to use information, the QSs are able to extract that information, use it to supplement their estimates, and ultimately we're all working together to share information for reuse and for the betterment of the project. We did a piece of work supporting the Hawkins team early on, just with some construction sequencing. So we had one of our digital team members sitting alongside the Hawkins programmer to actually look at sequencing construction. And the concept here is really build it twice. So build it once virtually and then build it a second time on site. Again, going back to how do we mitigate those risks through construction? How do we reduce those RFIs, which ultimately leads to cost savings and if not program certainty, program savings as well. And last but not least, so we are receiving information from the various construction contractors, one of which is Hawkins, around as-built and asset data through construction. So that's been gradually populated as Hawkins build, and then we're reporting on this using the Beca Beyond platform, using a series of dashboard reports, as well as things like Webster to do visual reports, and essentially checking on or reporting on the progress and the completeness of their asset information through construction, and doing checks on the as-built progress and the accuracy of that as-built information as well against the reference information that's provided by the contractor. So all of this ties back to the airport standards, and really the focus here is how do we optimize operational readiness? You know, this is a significant piece of infrastructure. It's operational. The airport wants it operational as soon as possible. So how can we capture the information? How can we have certainty that it's going to be delivered on time alongside the physical asset so that the airport can be operational as early as possible? I'll now pass on to Christian, who will talk us through the construction side of things.
Okay, so obviously we're talking about an airport, so I'm going to start off with, this is all about a journey. So starting off, a quick introduction to myself. I'm the BIM and Technology Systems lead at Hawkins. I've been at Hawkins 13 years, 16 years in construction, but I've started at the coalface. I started as a site foreman, design coordinator, design manager, BIM manager, and now into the role I am. But what I do is I drive the practical application of technology to do the things we've always done. And touching on Steve's point from earlier, is construction hasn't necessarily changed. We're still doing the same things ultimately that we did 20, 30, 40 years ago. But we want to be able to do those things better. We want to use the technology to leverage all the experience, all the knowledge we have, and essentially deliver better for our clients. As I said, this has been a journey. Hawkins' journey with Auckland Airport has spanned over the last 35 years. So there's sort of highlighting of lots of various projects we've touched. My journey started early on in some of the baggage handling in the international terminal. We've touched on the POB extension. We're currently working on work package 1, and so the points I've highlighted there are ones that I've currently worked on and we're going to touch on in this presentation, or things that are coming up in the future. But there's definitely a broad range of work we have covered in that across the wider airport campus. Okay, where Hawkins' BIM journey began, sort of 9 years ago in 2015, was the ITB, so International Terminal Building, baggage phase 1.2, and basically the international terminal arrivals baggage hall is essentially one of the most busy places in the airport that you could possibly be. It's where basically all the passenger flow goes through, and the highlighted section there is where we were working. To facilitate that work meters away from massive passenger flows, we did some early work on developing a 4D sequence. And so again, this is 9 years ago. We did this using Autodesk Navisworks. But it was a case of basically making sure that our team and the client team, especially with the airport's massive amount of different stakeholders, firmly understood where we were working, what we were doing, and when that was going to happen. So again, showcasing where we're going to be digging, where we're excavating. In this area, because we were mere meters away, basically passengers on the opposite side of the hoarding to where we were excavating, we needed to do a lot of planning. We needed to basically make sure how we were getting in, how the existing baggage tugs were getting around the site, how our equipment and materials were getting into the site. And so what can be seen in sort of the big orange section at the top, and there is a crash deck and passenger protection. So what we had to allow for was essentially a bit of 3D modelling. So again, this is going back 9-10 years, where for a contractor 3D modelling was, what's that? Where we modelled all the in-depth based to fabrication detail, this crash deck that allowed passengers to safely flow through directly below where we're working and beside. We also did, this is very early on, we undertook some passenger flow studies to essentially ensure we put forward an option with utilising existing columns rather than putting temporary columns in, to showcase, hey, we can do this smarter. We can basically maintain the passenger flow that's needed without impacting with temporary posts in the middle of the passenger area. Okay, so again, utilising Navisworks with those sort of passenger flow arrows shown in there to again visualise what is going to be happening, how are we going to be working in the space, and how is this going to impact on the passenger experience? Because from a client's perspective, they don't want an impact on passenger experience. They want it to be as smooth as possible, and obviously still get the works done that need to happen. Following on from that, sort of 2016 through to 2018, we worked into the Pier B extension. So this was off the end of the existing Pier B, which Hawkins had built probably 10 years prior. The extension of Pier B included 2 new gates, so essentially another 300 metres of building extended to service essentially the big A380 jets coming in. And so this was where we further developed from obviously having just basic 4D in isolation. This was probably one of our first sort of big BIM-enabled projects where we were utilising 3D coordination right through the structural steel and into the services, but was also one of the first big airport-driven projects where they required digital asset handover. So we had obviously the as-built handover of our building models, including both structural and services, but also the collection of asset data in line with the airport's requirements. Okay, I'm a big firm believer in recycling, so here's one of my slides from the 2019 BIM and NZ conference. Again, showcasing that, look, we worked with our supply chain. We understood that the supply chain isn't necessarily going to be BIM enabled, and this is definitely the case back in 2016. So where we had our major mechanical contractor, they did their own modelling. Similarly, the structural steel fabricator did their own modelling, but we worked with a third-party BIM modelling provider to undertake services modelling for the other services trades. But the key sort of takeaway from this was, even back then, majority of our review was visual checks, was walking along every length of pipe to try and identify, is there an issue, is there a clash? Because oftentimes you'll find that clashes aren't issues, or there's issues that aren't clashes. So the importance of actually understanding that everything has been checked. And so the advantage here is that you're doing it in a digital world. You're not waiting for it to be built. But again, there's not that reliance on clash detection, and that's sort of firmly my belief today still. Clash detection has its place, but visual checks are always the way to go forward. Okay, but the successes we had out of this and out of this modelling and coordination process was what was built matched the model. One of the biggest drivers of as-built drawings being different from construction issue is the on-site coordination. When you have people on-site going, oh, this doesn't work per the design, we're going to have to change it, and therefore have to change the as-builts to reflect that. Through this process, we've realised that coordinating up front, going through, doing those visual checks on the models, ensuring everything works, helps us to build what's on the model, build what's on those construction issue shop drawings, and save on that work down at the as-built stage. There's basically the as-built stage for us now is purely checking, just making sure are there little minor tweaks and changes, because we don't have that level of on-site coordination and issue resolution that we would have had 15, 20 years ago. Carl touched on the Asset Information Delivery Manual, and I want to highlight the importance of that level of client engagement. Often we get clients who have no interest in BIM or digital. They just want a project delivered on time, on budget. But the airport, obviously, as a long-term asset holder, has that interest in making sure that the asset they get, obviously they get the digital asset alongside that. And so we've worked closely with Carl and with Beca through the development of that, right from 2017 when that manual was first developed, right through to later versions 2018 and through to its current iteration now. But again, that helps to clearly define for us as a contractor, what are we expected to deliver? What information do we need to collect? Okay, and while it looks daunting, again, the clarity that this provides is absolutely massive for us. So again, pointing out what level of development's needed, and we can work with that rather than having guesswork as to what the client's actually after. Going forward, so that was sort of our journey to now. Here is the journey from now on. Currently, we're undertaking Work Package 1, which is the new Eastern Bag Hall, which essentially is the enabling works for the new domestic processor. And so going on from our earlier 4D work in Navisworks, we're now using a tool called Synchro, which is more at its basis a programming tool. And so we're using this quite heavily to obviously communicate our program and methodology, both with the client, but with our subcontractors, with our site operations teams as well. So they all firmly understand what are we doing, when, how does that work with our temporary works, our craneage. As Glenn and Carl have touched on, we're also using Webster quite heavily, having that collaborative issue management platform where everyone from the construction team through to our subcontractors, our suppliers, our design team, our client can be involved and enable us to sort of openly, transparently, collaboratively resolve these issues and get them resolved. And so, as Glenn pointed out, 12,000 plus issues on the current domestic processor design. It takes a while to get through, and having a tool that streamlines that is certainly helpful. Monitoring and tracking our progress is a big thing. So again, the airport's very interested in having a digital asset as well as the built asset, and ensuring that digital asset doesn't match what we've actually built and vice versa. And so using tools like timescapes, so this is a couple of static time-lapse cameras we have on site, and the functionality within there to be able to overlay the BIM model over the top of the camera imagery and actually be able to see where are we at, how does that match. And so we're using these sorts of tools as part of our visual verification methods. Part of the asset model handover for Auckland Airport is requirements to visually verify what we've built matches the model, as well as some cases measured as built. And so using these tools, so Timescapes is one, and another is Open Space, where we do regular walkthroughs with a 360 camera, and as well that's got that ability to overlay that imagery from a particular date and time across with the 3D model. So we can see and visually verify that, yes, what's shown in the image matches what's in the model. And step further that we're going with sort of early proof of concept stages, so augmented reality using tools like the Trimble XR10, the Microsoft HoloLens, and a tool called BIM HoloView to overlay that virtual model with reality. So to be able to go out on site and have an operative, instead of having a stack of paper drawings, to be able to actually look, does what I'm looking at here on site match the model with that model overlaid? So early proof of concept stage, it's not quite at the point of having it in the hands of every site manager and foreman and service engineer, but that's the way we'd like to take it, as that frontline QA tool to, again, ensure what we're building matches what's been designed. And so again, that was our WP1 project, which is underway now, which is sort of this area to the left of the domestic terminal, domestic processor. But our next project is going to be the domestic processor. So again, over the next 5 years, close to $1 billion worth of construction work. And again, we're utilising tools like Synchro to essentially stage some of that planning, and again looking at how the planning of not only our project but obviously adjacent projects, so where we've got other external contractors working on separate projects to our own, ensuring that the planning of their projects aligns with ours, so we don't suddenly have an area taken over where we can't because someone else is already working there. So in this we can see again the interface between the new domestic processor and our existing WP1 project. Just fast forward some of that. And so that's the present state. It's going to be, it's definitely been, like I say, a 35-year journey with Auckland Airport. As we progress through this next project, it'll take us to 40 years and hopefully a fair few more years after that. So without further ado, I'll hand back to Carl to cover off and take us to completion.
I haven't got any more slides to show, but just wanted to point out that at the end of the day, and as I alluded to at the start, is that it's all about collaboration and creating information to share with other people and making it easier for them to do their job. So that's really what we strive for. We don't set out to implement, that you have to use a particular tool. It's more around, what information has been created, what information do other parties need, who needs it, who's going to maintain it, how do they want to see it, and exchanging that between each other. And that enables us to then reduce some of the risk. There's still, there's always teething problems with when you're sharing this amount of information and making sure that everyone's got the latest view and is also looking at it in the right way. So it's really around looking at those processes and what people are in positions are involved. So a good example with BIM is people often think of it as just clash detection, and that the BIM model will sort itself out or the software will sort itself out. But actually, a lot of the times it's it's actually just getting in there and walking around the model and using the model to see the status of design or construction is actually the key. And you don't need to be doing the clash detection to find that. You just need the right information being represented and then being able to navigate around that. So really trying to shift the traditional roles of design management and project management to be able to get those roles into the space and not just see BIM as like a side project that people in a cave will take care of. So it's really around getting everyone involved and collaborating. So it's great to work with Glenn and the team at Beca and Christian and the team at Hawkins. So thank you all.
We are slightly over time, but I think if everyone turns their cameras on, we're probably happy to run through a couple of questions for 5 minutes or so. I'm probably going to go from the bottom up. I do apologise. I'll at least get started at the bottom and then work up to the top. So I've got one here that maybe it's Steve and Carl. So the question is, interested in understanding if there's a sweet spot regarding client involvement. So i.e. not being involved enough versus being too involved and potentially stifling innovation.
Could I have a shot at that? Yeah. Look, I don't know whether there is actually a sweet spot. That's trying to define that is quite interesting. I think the key role of the client is to enable the environment, is to make sure that you set the people up who are involved in delivering your projects or your programs, and give them permission to fundamentally in our world, it's do what's right, but what's right is delivering value. Right? So don't just implement something for the sake of implementing it, because that's too easy to do. But it's I'm not sure how to answer a sweet spot, but certainly the client's role is to enable the environment. We have to be involved though. I mean, we need to be part of in our world, in our collaborative world, we are just an equal partner. So we collectively make a decision what the sweet spot is, and it may mean that we have to drop in and do a bit more, or Beca do, or WSP do, or Fulton Hogan do, or Stantec do the work. So it's for us there isn't a sweet spot for the client. It's the only thing we need to do is create the environment.
Anything to add there, Cal?
Support that. I think it's not like as a client we don't stipulate exactly how our supply chain has to work, and actually give the opportunity for them to actually present more efficient ways of doing things. So I think for a client to actually be the gatekeeper of what's the state of the art and the best way to do things is, I think, can be a little bit naive. So it's more around letting the supply chain who are actually out there day to day in the tools, looking for new ways to do things, processes, and then the client just actually setting up the contract and the system to enable that. So I think that's my view on it.
Excellent. And I think on the delivery side, I'd agree with both of those sentiments. It's really important to be led by the client. Steve, I think you've answered this in the chat, but Jane asked a question: do you think there is a certain scale or size of project to make the case for this level of change?
The answer I typed in was, in fact, I got the advice from Farzam, which is probably about 5 million and up, but it does really depend on the complexity of the project. You may be doing a $15 million project that's a simple project in a pipeline in a street which is replacing an asset. There isn't a lot of a digital enablement for those projects. My famous quote is, it's grab the drawing, put a red line on it and give it to the contractor. So I think it is horses for courses, but for us it's probably the full implementation is probably 5 million and above, if not even a wee bit larger.
Excellent. One here, maybe it starts with the clients and then goes to Christian, or maybe it starts with Christian. I'll let you decide. Do you think it's possible to give the responsibility of the as-built elements to the lead consultant, or does it need to be contractor led?
I think ultimately it's down to us as the contractor to obviously build what's in the design and build it accurately, and then obviously if we've changed that, to record it accurately and record what's been changed and how. Ultimately, if the client is wanting a third party independent person to review that, and we've had that successfully in previous airport projects, where the airport's engaged an information manager to do a subsequent check on models and review and help to pick up issues that will then go on and rectified. So I think it is a collective thing, but ultimately, again, quality assurance does sit with the contractor.
Anything from Carl or Steve on that one?
Just on our side, it is the contractor's responsibility to provide the as-built, but then as a client, we also are sort of having an extra set of eyes over that, just doing spot checks to make sure that it is right, because ultimately once the contractor's finished, they're sort of moved on to the next job, and we're the ones that actually sit with it going forward. So we just want that assurance that it is the way we want it and we can rely on it. So we're just now really trying to improve the understanding of how reliable that information is and actually give it a rating, so that not everything's treated equal.
Excellent.
Same answer. Agreed.
There's one more that's kind of related, and maybe I'll go to you, Carl. So how do you transform construction data? Sorry, it's gone down the chat. How do you transform construction data, so drawings and models, to as-built stage? And what we've answered that. What platform do you store that data in?
So it's a combination, really. So some data will sit in GIS, some will sit within the model, and then we're also within the actual model file. But then what we are doing is using implementing Derofus, which is a database connected to the model. So that would, within that, you can then link O&M manuals, any product specifications, and other data you can then link to the object. But then some things aren't actually, you might not model everything, so therefore Derofus allows us to actually just link stuff to a room. So you can say that a particular sensor might not be worth modeling, but you can say that there's this type of sensor which is in an asset register, and then it's in this space, and then you could find all the places where that type of thing is. So it's sort of a multi-pronged approach depending on what the asset is. So we're building a data dictionary which explains, for each asset what data is captured about it and where does it sit, because it will be in multiple places where it's published, but there'll be a source of where it's produced.
I did two more questions. I'll maybe have a crack at the first one and then hand over to Steve or Carl. So what percentage of value from digital is realized in operations as opposed to construction and delivery? This is a question that I ask a lot and that I'm quite passionate about. And there's not a lot of research or a lot of clear answers from what I can see at this stage worldwide to answer this question. But I think part of that is because on the asset owner side, is benchmarking in place to benchmark things like how long it takes you to access, say, some warranty information for an asset or a piece of equipment, or how many times you've had to go down to the basement to dig out paper drawings, or go up to the big storage locker with paper drawings in that are slowly degrading and wasting away. So I don't think there's any clear answers there, but I think if you start to ask yourself those questions and ask yourself how much time you could save if it was available, if it was at your fingertips, then you start to see that there's huge value in this. And ultimately, we know that 80% approximately of an asset's cost is in its operation phase. So there's huge savings to be made. But I'll pass on to either Steve or Cal if you want to comment there.
Yeah, I had a good example of this the other day. It was a meeting around some asbestos clearance, and it was in a space that was a plant room, and you can't go there unless you've got the right approvals and your own personal respirator and things. And what the one person that had that access had gone through and just done a 360 walkthrough scan with a Matterport, and then all the maintenance crew and the planners were in an office environment looking at that in detail, zooming into things. And I was sitting there thinking, actually, how would have they done this without that tool? And I think that's often the thing with maintenance, is that and opens up new possibilities. So you're kind of not comparing apples and apples. It's just a new way of doing things, and you get more people around the table and hopefully make better decisions faster. So, you know, sitting there seeing there's about 6 or 7 people in the room when, you know, none of them, or one of them was actually allowed to go to the actual physical space, and then you've actually been able to have that conversation in detail. So I think it opens up those possibilities, and particularly when you've got large assets, you know, around the country or in a large area, just having, you know, you don't have to rely on people going and standing on site to look at everything, to have those discussions. So that in itself creates a lot of time saving.
Anything to add, Steve?
Nah, no commentary really. It's untapped. We don't really have the data. Just make sure we don't do anything that makes it worse for them.
Awesome. Well, we're 15 minutes over. I know there is still a few questions in the chat there, but maybe we'll take those questions offline, and we can provide an email or a written response. So thanks again to everyone attending. Thanks to the up of around 800 people that have stayed on past the end of the session, and thanks again to Steve, Farzam, Carl, and Christian for joining us in this webinar and sharing their insights. Keep an eye out for webinar number 3, and keep an eye out for the recording, which should be on our website later in the week. And I think there's a link in the chat to where that will be. Thank you all.